Hello everyone, this is Sarah from Defection Gaming here to discuss the Smite closed beta version 0.1.1328. It's the Vulcan patch, which came out very recently. I haven't had a chance to go over it fully, but I have had a chance to play a couple of games with Vulcan, so I'm just going to go over the Smite wiki page and see what sort of things are very good in it, and what I like and what I don't like, etc. I've already seen the Smite God reveal for Vulcan, so if you want to see that, you can go on YouTube and see it. So let's discuss Vulcan. His passive is Forge, and he transfers 30% of his protection and 15% of his health to his turrets. In addition, when Vulcan is within 30 feet, he regenerates 3% of their health every second because of their proximity to him. So I think this is good because he is obviously a god that relies on his turrets, so it's a good passive for him to have. And I think that I don't think it's overpowered as it is at the moment. It could be overpowered, but that's yet to see. But it would probably be a good idea to build a more healthy tank for Vulcan if his turrets are a bit weak. Backfire. This is a sort of straightforward snipe. Vulcan blasts a fireball out of the Forge, dealing 85, 145, 205, 265, 325, plus 70% of his magical power as magical damage to all enemies in a path, and the strength of the blast knocks him back 20 feet. And it costs 65, 70, 75, 80, 85 mana. It's got a 15-second cooldown. I think the cooldown is probably a bit long, because I've played it in a game, and it's not that dangerous. At least it's not dangerous at all early game, I found. It's good for clearing creep at the end when you've got a full rack of 6 items and you're fed to hell. You can blast straight through creep really easily. But as a finisher, it's quite good. I've been chasing people and they're just out of my range and I'm just able to snipe them off, so it's not too bad, but it does have the drawback of the push backwards, so if you don't hit them or it doesn't quite kill them, then you're not going to catch up to them again. But what I've also found is it's very good for escaping Hades ultimates. You just point it towards Hades, do damage to him and fly backwards out of it, which is useful really. It's useful if you're against Hades. It's an okay escape. I think it'd probably work against Ymir as well. But that's not the main thing about Vulcan. The main thing that's impressive about him are his 2 turrets, the Inferno Cannon and the Thumper 16. The Inferno Cannon shoots fireballs in a cone that deals 65, 100, 135, 170, 205, plus 20% of your magical power as magical damage every second. The Inferno Cannon lasts until destroyed or another is placed. The inherit Vulcan's penetrations but does not apply on his effects. So his pen affects Inferno Cannon, so you can build things like Obsidian Shard with it. However, it doesn't apply on effects, so things like Quinn's Blades and the orb that slows people, the 35% slow, that won't trigger on his Inferno Cannon or his Thumper 16. So you don't need to get that as an item. It's a pretty good item, but the passive slow in it is really what you're going for. So I would highly suggest not building that item because it states quite clearly here that it doesn't work. The Inferno Cannon is very good. I build it first because I saw someone. I was completely devastated in Conquest by a Vulcan, and we were playing an Arachne Sobek lane. We couldn't pull him or Anubis at all, and he just decimated us to pieces. So Inferno Cannon is very, very strong damage at the beginning. Thumper 16 is also very good. It is a AoE damage, does 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 plus 10% of your magical power every second and slows enemies by 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. But you can increase it to with focus up to 35%. Now there's been quite a few changes to focus again. So we'll discuss that in a moment. And that slow is for 2 seconds. This Thumper 16 lasts until it's destroyed or is not replaced is the other one, and it does not apply the extra slowing effect from the slow orb. It's useful. It's very, very good in Odin's ult, and so is Inferno Cannon for that matter. But when you're chasing people down, they're going to be hit one, maximum twice by a Thumper 16, unless you have multiple people slowing them. But the slow is noticeable. You can hurt them while they're in it. It's also pretty good at killing creep waves. However, just putting the Thumper 16 and the Inferno Cannon in the way, the Inferno Cannon range will be able to hit them, but the Thumper 16 won't. Because as the creep are running to you, the archers will stand outside the Thumper 16's range, so it won't be hit at all. So the Thumper 16 will just die to arrow fire eventually. But all in all, the turrets are very, very strong at the moment because people don't really know how to counter them. The way you counter them, in my opinion at the moment, is to destroy them, because they're on quite big cooldowns. They're both on 15-second cooldowns. So if you, in a quick Anubis grasping hands on both of the turrets and take them down in 3 seconds, that is him pretty much taken out of the fight, because his Volcanic Overdrive, everything is geared towards his turrets. If he doesn't have his turrets, he doesn't have damage. If he doesn't have damage, he is just a big slab of meat running around the place. He does not have a strong melee attack, really. He hits you, but it's not very noticeable, especially in late game when you're running around. But yeah, focus his towers. If you see them if you see them in the middle, put some AoE on it, quickly get rid of them, and it makes him virtually useless. But at the moment, people aren't targeting the towers, so he is getting away with lots of things that he won't be getting away with later. So you will get better gameplays with Vulcan now than you will in a week's time. Much, much better gameplays, so long as you learn how to use him properly. Now, Volcanic Overdrive is he gains 15, 20, 25, 30 and 35% movement speed, which is very, very good. And 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 magical protections, which is also very useful. And all of Vulcan's structures fires 50% faster and gains massive regeneration. The Inferno Cannon also fires within a 360-degree radius instead of an Anubis cone. And auto-targets God while under the effects of Volcanic Overdrive. Yeah, I've had people engage me with a creep wave. And I've just popped my Volcanic Overdrive. They haven't realised what's happening, and they've just died straight away. The protections are very, very good. I think it makes building him as sort of like almost a brawler mage tank, a bit like Odin but for magical, viable, I think, and that's what I've been building him as. I get Warlock Sash on this guy every time, and it is fantastic since the Warlock change, and we'll go over that in a moment when we get down to items. But yeah, as a god, I think Vulcan is, at the moment, everyone's saying he's overpowered because they don't understand his turrets. If you take the turrets out quickly, he is practically useless because his Volcanic Overdrive is putting them up, etc. So I don't think he's really overpowered, because once I played him a couple of times and I was playing against him, I just killed the towers as a ranged carry and he could do nothing really. So the idea is build around the towers. I would always get Inferno Cannon first and then build Thumper 16 before moving on to his backfire, because I haven't really found that useful or a situation to use it in apart from getting a little snipe kill or a little bit of extra damage. But the knockback isn't that far. So I wouldn't, while you're running away, turn around, fire it to go further, because I think you'd probably not go as far. But as a character, I think he's pretty good. I also like his Ironsmith skin. It does look pretty cool. But yeah, that's Vulcan time will tell whether how good he is and how strong his turrets are. But at the moment, he's very strong because people don't know how to deal with him. He's also a very positional god, so he's tricky to play if you don't have your positioning exactly right. So you just need to err on the cautious side. I think this god suits passive players absolutely magically. So we'll see how it works. I'll quickly go over the general changes. Most of these are just cosmetic little extras, which are little tweaks to the game to make it a bit better. You have larger clan tags, up to 5 characters, which are better. Good for juice gaming now. Players level 1 to 5 have their own little novice conquest queue, which I think's good again. But they can join you in arena or domination, so you can still play with your friends who are much higher than you to get them into the game, and then go to Conquest, because I think Conquest's more of a... because I think Domination and Arena are more casual because of the game length, and Conquest is a bit more... because it takes a long time, can take up to an hour. So people emotions run high, and they won't be shouted at for feeding too much, hopefully. 4 or 5 person teams are now allowed to enter the normal Conquest queue. However, the matchmaking logic has been changed to make sure that people of 4 and 5 play together. This was because lots of 5-man teams were getting up to play, and they were not going all the way through. They couldn't get a match for a while if no other 5-man teams were playing. So I think this is a good change. Because you will play against teams of 4 and 5 and 3, etc. So you will get a challenging game, and I think it's a good way for them to play it at the moment. The login screen's undergone a massive makeover, which I think is pretty good. It does look a bit... I will miss the beautiful Zeus black and white kind of thing, but because I thought that looked really, really good. But to have Vulcan there does look pretty stunning, so it's nice that it's adapting and getting better, and hopefully every time a new god's released we'll have a new background. But that's wishful thinking. You can now view the profile of your friends in perspective, friends from the friends screen. Better presentation has been implemented for swapping gods while in draft mode, which is good because there have been instances where people have wanted to swap gods and haven't been able to because they didn't understand it was starting. So that's hopefully good now. The top ranked players listed now only shows players that have played in ranked in the past 7 days. This means that people who are on the top will have to keep playing regularly to stay on the top, and people on the bottom will have a better chance of progressing further, which is good. Which means that if the more time you put into it, really is more beneficial, which is the way it should be. Fixed a bug, which is stats link on team page was not working. Several conditions at the end of match screen where the data was not populating correctly. Fixed a bug in which stats some matches the history screen was not correct. Several tweaks in solo practice bot AI. The Ra is so good now. If I tried to back and he sniped me from the opposite side of a wall, because I was in the jungle and he just sniped me through the wall. I heard him charging up, but I thought, he's using his ult on the creep. But oh no, I was killed through a wall. So the Ra's gotten a lot better. I'm really happy about that. It just lots of little bug fixes. No longer rent or purchase gods in draft mode, which is, I think, a good change. So you can't just say, I want that god, buy. You have to go in with a certain number of gods, which I like. Fix an issue that prevented some players from playing ranked matches because of the minimum required god purchase. Some people who had the right amount of gods weren't able to play ranked properly for some reason. Not entirely sure why, but they would get kicked and things, but that's now been fixed. Fix an issue in draft mode where your chosen god disappeared. I never experienced that, but it's gone now. Fix the EOML issue where the accolades were not representing correctly. Now this is good because I went into a game and we were crushed. I went 2 for 2 and like 1 assist. We were destroyed and my team surrendered within 10 minutes. And it came up, you have 4 quadra kills, and I was like, what? Oh no, I didn't. I don't remember that. So yeah, hopefully that won't happen again, because it was quite funny having like 20 kills, 4 quadra kills, and all sorts. It was hilarious. Um, Vulcan's turrets, Bastet's cats now show the minion icon on the map, which is good. It shows where Vulcan's turrets are and where little Bastet's cats are attacking things. It does help with knowing when people have used ultimates in other areas and where Vulcan's turrets are. So that if they're in a lane and you're running away from someone, you can run into Vulcan's turrets. Player being damaged by a player's pet now tags both the pet and the owning player as having recently attacked their player, which is good because now Bastet's cats can't just tower dive for free, which I think is very, very good and very useful. Fix an issue that could cause database issues upon large numbers of concurrent logins. This hasn't necessarily been completely fixed because the game is still down quite a lot, but it's been fixed to a point. Spectator changes. I don't think I'm going to go over this because I don't have Spectator yet. I will be going over Spectator basically, but they've essentially made it better and easier for people who have Spectator. But it's still, Spectator is very much in a very closed beta at the moment, getting it all perfect and making it right before they roll it out to us. But I'll enjoy spectating people's games in ranked, and I'll hopefully be bringing you lots of content about when and why people are doing things. Right, let's move on to the jungle camps. I think they've made some very significant changes to the buffs, and I think people who read Smite Wiki and watch YouTube videos about it will have a significant advantage over people who don't. Let's start with the cooldown buff. 20 focus has been added to the cooldown buff. This is... I had no words when I first read this. It was incredible. My first thought was a Ymir at level 1 running into my lane with a big spangly white belt and freezing me for 4,000 years, and I would be able to do absolutely nothing at all, because 20 focus on... It would make it like a 3-second stun or something at level 1. It's just... I don't think they've thought this through at all, because the gods which CCs are affected by focus. Ymir's, I think, probably the worst, where it's so the focus level gets so utterly ridiculous that he can have a ginormous stun, absolutely massive. So you're frozen in place forever, and if and at the beginning of the game you don't have beads or anything, so. Or most people don't, so you will die. So when I saw this, I immediately, in every game, I tell people on that side to get cooldown buff, because with the tank, because it is very, very strong at the moment. They're probably going to take the focus away or tone it down. This is typical high res. They throw a huge buff or a huge nerf at something to see where in the middle of that, either being overpowered or nerfed to hell, where in the middle the proper line is. I think they've got the very much way of thinking, if we test both extremes, we'll know where the good middle ground is. So which is fine, and I'd rather they do it now than when the game is fully launched, and there are millions of people, hopefully millions like League, if we can get it good enough, that will complain about things like this and will stop playing. So as long as they do it now in the beta with the more loyal people, then it's fine. But this is just I just think it's absolutely game breaking and silly. Anyway, damage buff, 10 plus magical power and 5 plus physical power has been added. I think this is good, a very good change, because now your buffs in the beginning of the game, the damage will mean more, because at the beginning it doesn't mean a huge amount, because your creep is doing most of the damage ideally, but the damage buff is just a nice extra little thing to have. But this will make people with damage buff deadlier, essentially, and it will basically make junglers more effective, which didn't necessarily need to happen, but this makes this damage buff more significant early game, because it was very... No one really picked it apart from dedicated junglers in the early game. So now this will make it, maybe some mids will go for taking the buffs, but we don't know. I think it's a good change though. But we'll see when we come up to it. The speed buff, 10% attack speed has been added to this buff. I think early game, yet again, this could be nasty and a little bit overpowered because the speed buff and the cooldown buff are right next to each other, and if you spend your time taking those two out, having the speed buff on, for example, a Loki, and the cooldown buff on a Ymir, you freeze someone for 1,000 years, and Loki will easily be able to kill them with speed buff. This would have, I think, been a good change to speed buff anyway, because a little bit of more of attack speed will make the buffs count for more. So late game, you're going for the buffs as well as going for Fire Giant and Gold Fury. You'll be trying to have little skirmishes for the buffs, which I think will make the game play better and be more competitive late game, which I think is very, very good. But I think maybe a scaling buff of like every 5 minutes it goes up by 2%, so it starts off at 2% and goes up to 10% might be better, because then it's a significant buff late game and an okay buff early game. But 10%, I don't know whether that will be completely broken yet. I'll have to play test that quite a bit to see if that's nasty. But the cooldown buff, that is broken. 20 focus at level 1 is maddening. But let's stop talking about that, because you're probably sick of me going, I'm afraid of that. But anyway, let's move on to the items. Loads of the items have had the focus removed and been repriced. Bulwark of Hope, the shield duration has gone from 2 seconds to 1 second. I think this is good, because the true burst is in the first second. Everything after that is more sustained bursty damage. Bulwark of Hope was practically a counter. Not exactly, but practically a counter to Zeus and Anubis and people who did huge burst damage, because their damage was cut so by such a lot they were almost unable to finish tanks. Having it taken from 2 seconds to 1 second means that they will be able to kill the tanks much easier, and it's not overpowered. And also in the competitive scene, DPSs were taking this, not just tanks and brawlers. So I think taking it from 2 seconds to 1 second will make it less of an overpowered item. I don't think its price has been changed, but I think that was a very, very good change and a necessary one. It's still a very, very viable good item, but now hopefully it won't be taken by everything under the sun. Death's Toll, passive now restores 1.5% mana per hit with basic attacks. I think this is really good for mid lane carries, so that when they're doing things like Anher and that, they'd run out of mana if played incorrectly. Things like people like Odin would run out of mana if played incorrectly in mid lane. So I think this will help with their sustain and mean they won't necessarily have to buy meditation, because that meditation is very much an early game item, but it was almost necessary for physicals in the mid lane. So people like Kali can now hopefully do it through attacking alone. So I think this is a good change, and I'm happy about that. The Golden Bow, the radius has been additional damage has been increased from 10 feet to 15 feet. Yeah, no one really takes Golden Bow. I occasionally do, but very rarely. So I think this is probably a good change to try and make it a more popular item. I don't think any of the other stats on it need to change, but I think it was a little bit low, the radius, and I think this will be able to, if they're able to hit gods on the edge of the bowman, for example, then I think this will make this item a bit more picked. But we'll have to wait and see. Magi's Blessing. The passive now absorbs an enemy spell every 30 seconds instead of every 45 seconds. I think this buff is good because it will. I like this item, and I don't think every 30 seconds is overpowered. I think that's pretty good because in a team fight it lasts 30 seconds anyway. But only if you're retreating for a long period of time will this help. The reason I don't think this is overpowered by shaving a whole 15 seconds off a cooldown is because of people like Anubis, whose ultimate is a line of death, and it applies every second or half second or whenever it applies. So the damage only is absorbed for one of those ticks. So it's only absorbed for one tick of that, one tick of Grasping Hands, one tick of Locust Swarm you're absorbing. So you're not necessarily absorbing a huge amount, just a little bit of extra damage. You absorb a huge amount if you absorb a Zeus number 3, for example, but that is shady whether you're going to take that, and Zeus can hit you with his number 1 first to make sure you don't have the buff on, and then hit you with his number 3. So it's debatable whether how strong that is or not, but I don't think it's that strong. I think it was a not necessary change, but a good change to see it be better. The base Vampiric Shrouds, the base stats and passive are completely changed to 10 plus magical power, 100 health, and 5 MP5. And the passive is killing an enemy restores 10 health and mana. This is good, very good starting item for mid lane now for any magical people, because they have a little bit more health, a little bit more magical power, and MP5. MP5 is a huge amount to a it's worth its weight in gold. It means you don't have to take meditation, which means the carry in the middle, such as Ra, will not have to take a meditation. They will be able to use things for beads and amulet and things to escape. So you're not necessarily wasting your late game defense for early game offense or early game pushing. So I'm happy with this. The passive is the only thing I'm not 100% set. The killing enemy restores 10 health and mana. You'd be able to cast, as Ra, for example, you'd be able to cast his number 1 ability, Celestial Beam. You'll be able to cast that almost for free. And I'm not entirely sure that that's not overpowered, but you never know. We'll have to see, but maybe they'll tweak that to 5, I would have thought would be better, but we'll have to see how it goes. They've obviously playtested it quite a lot. Warlock Sash now stacks 2 health instead of 2 mana. I've read a lot of things about people hating on this and people being happy with this. It makes it a defensive item and makes it so that our Kwang players, their magical damage at the end will probably be shaved off a bit until they find something that can replace Sash. But the health is very good for magical tanks, of which we have another one. I tried this on Vulcan. It's an incredible item. Get Sash second every single time unless you're facing incredible pushing power. It is very, very, very useful. You get a huge amount of health. Your turrets get better. You have decent attacking power and more mana. It's a very good item to have on a magical tank now. It's just very, very strong. I like it. I think it's a good change because it's more of a tanky meta at the moment. And having more options as the tanks is a good idea because magical have so many options to rain down hell. And Ao Kuang, he didn't need it. This is sort of like a mini nerf to Ao Kuang, but he's got Book of Thoth, which is very helpful to him now. It sort of stacks with his passive to make himself crazy. So I think he needed a tiny bit of stepping back because last time I played him, I had something like 850 magical damage, which is just crazy, absolutely crazy. So I think toning it down just a tiny bit is good, but we'll have to see whether this is a good change. I think it is, but I'm a tank player mostly. I really like playing magical tanks and physical tanks, so it's good for me, not necessarily good for other people, but we'll have to see whether it's good for everyone. Boots of the Magi, out of combat movement speed has been removed, and this is the same for all of the boots. And 12 here, Boots of the Magi has 12 magical penetration, has been added to the rank 3. Warrior Tabby has a little bit of physical penetration. And Reinforced Boots doesn't get a little extra thing, because they were already pretty good. I think adding pen to the boots is probably a good thing because of the tanky meta. We needed a tiny bit more penetration, and everyone gets boots, so it's a good thing. Not putting something on reinforced boots, I don't think it was necessary, so that's fine. The out of combat movement speed, been removed from the Mad J boots and the Warrior Tabby boots. It's good that it's been removed because people like Monkey and Ra were getting to insane levels of movement speed and could escape instantly, and I don't think that's necessarily fair, especially for the Monkey, because he has such incredible movement speed and that anyway, so he didn't really need it, and I think it will make it so that Monkeys have to play a bit more carefully, and Monkeys playing more carefully is exactly what you want because they're crazy. But Reinforced Boots has an extra movement, outer speed, combat movement speed, which I think it means that your tanks will be a bit more maneuverable. It won't change a huge amount, but it means they'll be a bit quicker on ganks, or be a bit quicker getting places. And I think all the movement speed and everything that's everywhere else, I think that it will be good to get your tanks there faster. Because they're essentially what keeps your whole team alive and are a key point in the team fight. And if a tank is a couple of seconds late, that's your entire team wiped apart from the tank. So getting the tank there on time is good. I think it will be better competitive, assaulty play. We'll just have to see what it does and whether that's removed. I have a sneaking suspicion it will be removed. It will be seen as overpowered. But don't know yet, but it potentially will be. So don't necessarily count on that being there forever. But I think it's a good change. Girdle of Might. The ability now buffs magical and physical power by 10%. I think that's good. It means Girdle of Might wasn't really picked that often, but making it stronger, so the burst damage is even better, will make it better team synergy. So probably one person will get it in the whole team, and then pop it when everyone's popping their ultimates. So we'll have a big crazy fight, which is what we want in competitive play. But that's just my opinion. I think it might make it better, but also there's a negative of it might make it a lot worse. It might make it that characters are picked off instantly because of this, and it might be removed. So, and it's a double-edged sword, but I think it's probably going to end up in a positive, but not 100% sure yet. Meditation. After using ability, you now get 15 MP5 for 15 seconds. That's not too bad. You gain an extra 45 mana. It wasn't necessarily a necessary extra little change, but it's something that just tops you off if your mana's at absolute zero. The thing is, I think they're trying to make meditation more viable for late game, but this wasn't really the way to do it. But it's a nice little buff to an item which wasn't very useful in the mid-late game, but because you buy meditation, you're committing to having a strong early game. So we'll just have to see whether this makes any difference. I personally don't think it will, but most things in Smite is let's wait and see, because you can't do anything until the community's play tested it and then found something broken. So we'll find broken things. Never fear, high res. We will find them. We're good at that. Creeping Curse. The cooldowns have been reduced from 150 to 120 seconds. I think this is a brilliant change. It makes fights more aggressive. It just putting it on a 2-minute cooldown is just, to me, a really, really good thing. I think that the speed you can knock off from it. It essentially secures more kills for both teams getting Creeping Curse, and I really like that idea. I think it will make everything more brawlery, more fighty, and it will make engagements for buffs and engagements for Biogiant and that more controlled, because if people are going in for a quick buff and then trying to retreat, you can Creeping Curse and take out 2 or 3 of them if you're quick enough. So I think it's a good change. Shaving off 30 seconds is good. I'm happy about that, because I think it was a bit long before. it makes it a much better viable option, and it'll be more engagements and more fun. Having said that, it could be terrifying and really really overpowered, but we'll have to see. But I think it won't be too overpowered. I think it'll be the amount of creep and curse we will see will go up by quite a lot. But I like creep and curse gameplay. It's fun. I don't even mind if I'm slowed 1,000 times and someone pops a creep and curse. I'm like, well, definitely dead. So it's good. I think it's good. I think it's a very very good change. I'm very excited about this. I think it will make the game better, more brawlery and fighty. But I've said that before, so. Fatalis. Well done, High Res. You've ruined Fatalis. This item now provides focus. Passive has been changed from movement speed and attack speed to movement speed and focus. Maximum number of stacks has been changed from 3 to 4. I think it's going for a focus attack speed. Focus movement speed really does just change the item. It makes it. I think it's just not very good anymore. It used to be, you used to put it on people like Freya and Loki, and it was quite useful for them, and it made them more viable. But I think making it, because what they're doing with focus is just crazy, trying to make it balanced, but then they do the cooldown buff. I don't know, but I don't think this is a good change for Fatalis, and I think they'll change it back and find and make new items for focus. I think that's what they're going to eventually do, but they're just trying to put items in there at the moment that aren't necessarily being used, and just say, oh, we'll make that a focus item because only Loki and Freya will be affected, and that doesn't matter. But we'll just we'll have to see. But I don't think I'm going to pick up this item unless I have to. Unless I'm building Melee Ymir or something, which is so good. So actually that might help Melee Ymir actually. So yeah, I found a niche for this Fatalis, Melee Ymir. We'll have to see whether that's any good. I might do a video about it. We'll have to see. But I don't like it. I don't like what they've done to Fatalis, but I didn't pick it very much anyway, so it doesn't matter. Next, Circle of Focus. It's been changed significantly and no longer is a starting item. It has a 3-tiered thing. It gives focus on ability use, and recommended items have replaced with this item with vampiric. Recommended items have replaced this item with vampiric shroud. So essentially, mage mids now have vampiric shroud instead of Circle of Focus, which is good. I had an inkling they were going to change Circle of Focus to a very focus intensive item yet because of the name. And I was right. It essentially gives you a certain amount of extra focus when you use an ability. I think it's when, for example, Ymir, if he freezes you, he will get this bonus to focus. So it's essentially a useful item if your things are from abilities, making Ymir stronger. It'll be interesting to see if it has a little cooldown on it. It doesn't say here, but Smite Wiki might have missed it out. But I think it could be potentially broken with CC tanking and other people's CC, but it will depend how much focus and all that. But yeah, the game's down at the moment, so I can't go in and check. But it might be a good item, might be a bad item. We'll have to see. It's very much a you need to play test item. So we'll have to have a look at that later. Gods, Ares, I'm very happy of this change. Movement speed buff and debuff has been increased from 10% to 15%. If you didn't know, Ares shackles did damage and leached 10% of their movement speed and gave it to you. Now it's 15%. So that being, you run essentially 30% faster against the person you're against. So you can catch up and hit them and things. And I think that's a brilliant change. And the focus contribution for that has been increased from 1% to 1.5% per focus, which is good because you'll be able to slow much more effectively. Because his ultimate was nerfed so horrendously before, with the speed he moves back and being affected by everything under the sun. And all ranged physical carries now have an ultimate that, apart from Shibalonke pretty much, that completely negates his ultimate as well, as instead of just buying beads and an Aegis Amulet. There are so many things that count as his ultimate that he did need something to make his other skills a bit better. I think they're not necessarily going to rework his ultimate, but I think they'll increase the movement speed while under your ultimate again to make it more viable, and probably make it so that if you get Aegis Amulet and you're pulled in, you get pulled in when you use Aegis Amulet, so you don't take damage, but you are pulled in. I think that, again, but I don't know. It depends what Hi-Rez wants. But I do think that Ares is a subpar at the moment, which is very upsetting because I loved Ares when he first came out. He may have been a tad overpowered, but his damage is still pretty good, especially against tanks. So he's sort of viable, but he did need this extra little bonus. What I'm looking for is for his number 3 to be buffed a little bit as well. But moving on to Freya, this is absolutely ridiculous. Freya did not need a buff. I don't know where this is coming from. Damage been increased from 40, 55, 70, 85, 100 to 50, 70, 90, 110, 130, doing 30 more damage each time you hit with Irradiate. This Irradiate was so strong. You melt everything in front of you. It doesn't matter if it's a tank, if it's the squishiest little carry in the world. You will go up to it and hit it with your sword, and it's like a lightsaber. It just goes straight through them. It is amazing damage you get from it. And you get even more magical contribution, 30% to 35%. It's incredible. Why buff it? Freya has apparently got the lowest win-loss ratio, etc., has the lowest kill death. I read all of that, and I understand that Hi-Rez thinks she needs a buff, and I know she's never picked in competitive play, but that's because she doesn't necessarily have an escape, and she's tricky to use and very easy to catch out of position, and that's why she isn't picked. She's not necessarily picked because her damage isn't up to par. Her damage is very, very big, and late game fed Freya is one of the scariest things you can have on the enemy team. And just looking at this, I was just like, why, Hi-Rez? Why? It's genuinely, she doesn't need. I'm going to look forward to running around with my lightsaber and getting the extra damage while it's still there, because this will not last long, I don't think at all. I think this is going to go back to exactly where it was before very quickly. I would not have called this a... The reason she isn't picked is because of her CC is difficult to land. If you made that CC slightly bigger, then she'd be used in competitive play, and that would be fine. But oh no, you buff her strongest ability. But that doesn't matter. But you'll just pop Radiate and Pulse and hammer. Oh god, it's going to be so unbelievably strong. Everyone play Freya, learn how to play her, and dominate, because she has become. That is genuinely frightening. Not probably more frightening than the cooldown buff, because Freya is strong. Hell, Decay and Restoration has been increased from 10 seconds to 12 seconds, and Hinder, Cleanse, and Repulse Inspire has been increased from 14, 13, 12, 11, 10 to 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. I agree with this very, 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 very much. An extra 2 seconds to Decay and Restoration and Hinder, Cleanse is good. It means that I don't think she'll be able to spam all of one set, change, and immediately spam the other set, and change and spam the next set. I think she'll have to wait a couple of seconds, so she won't be so much of a machine gun. But I haven't been in a game yet where Hell hasn't been banned straight away. So I think people are still thinking she's overpowered or haven't quite read the forums yet. But we'll have to play test to see whether this is a good or bad thing to happen. But I think it's good, because she is a bit too spammy and strong. What I think should really happen with Hell is her ability should hit a lot harder, like an extra 10-15% harder they should hit you, and maybe more damage, maybe put a damage on hinder and cleanse, but make the abilities, for example, back to what they were, 10-second cooldown, but make them so that you can't use both sets. All the cooldowns are triggered in one set, so then you have the same amount of abilities that everyone else has, and it's a bit fairer. But lots of people disagree with that particular way to do it, but at the moment, Hell, I think, is still one of the best gods in the whole entire game, especially for casual play. She's very, very strong. This will weaken her a bit, but not necessarily enough. But we'll have to see. Hercules. His mitigate wounds cooldown has been increased from 12 seconds to 17 seconds. This definitely needed to happen, because while you were healing from the first mitigate wounds, you could pop the second. So it was pretty much impossible for you to die. Now it means that the mitigate wounds has to completely finish before you are able to trigger the next cycle of it. I think this will make him not as overpowered as he is. However, his mitigate wounds wasn't the only overpowered thing about him. His pull is incredible. I mean, nerfing Sobek and then putting Hercules on it made no sense. So what I think they're going to do is make the target area smaller, or mean it can only pick up if they're a creep inside the area, the person can't be lifted. Things like that would make it better. Or it can only pick up one person or two people, and it could do creep first or something. But I don't know. It would be quite interesting to see how they could work that, and I think they are working on it from all the feedback and the fact that Hercules is banned more than Hell is. I haven't been in the Hercules game where he hasn't been banned. Yeah, so we'll have to see how much of a nerf that is to him. I think it's probably what he needs, and I think they'll leave it at that, because it'll probably be alright. We'll see. We'll have to see, but I think that's probably okay. Odin, his Gungnir's Might finally has had slow has an increase from 15% to 25%, which means that it's the same slowing effect as the Frostbound Hammer, which is exactly what you wanted. It means you'll be able to... It only lasts for 2 or 3 seconds, so it doesn't matter with that anyway, but it's good. It makes it really, really good. It makes it a good skill, and you don't have to build it necessarily straight away. And the contribution of the slow from the focus has been increased from 30 to 35% as well, which is exactly what we wanted. We want him to be better. Because, well, his Gungnir's Might did need a little bit of buffing. The slow, not the damage, because because I tend to get it for the slow, but only use slow so that other people are able to use their CC slightly more easier. Now this it's a genuine CC. It's a genuine little slow, so I'm happy with that. It's a small slow, but it's a slow. Ring of Spears, the base protection of the ring has been increased to 30 to 50. This is toes in line with Vulcan's top defensive thing, which was 50 protections. I think they've done it so that both of the more brawly tanks, being Odin and Vulcan, they can both have the same sort of top tier ult, so that their protections are the same, so that everyone can build them roughly the same and see where they go. But I did think that Odin's this will make him a lot stronger in one-on-one fights, and in team fights, and make him a better tier. He may even rise to tier 2, tier 1, from tier 2 to tier 1. I think he's pretty... I think this is a necessary change, because his protections won't be as good as other tanks. He was a bit lackluster as a tank, and this makes him better as a tank. It also makes him better as a brawler, which I play him mostly as. But I'm just happy about this change. I think it's good. We'll have to see what everyone else thinks, but I think it's a much needed The Ring of Spears less so, but the Gundir's Might is a much, much needed change. We'll have to see how overpowered the Ring of Spears is and if Hi-Rez will nerf that, but I don't think they will. I think this is a good change. I think this is what it needs to be. Finally, Loki. Its Assassinate no longer hits players that were not targeted. So, if you... Because sometimes with Loki, you'd pop Assassinate and go for the attack, but you'd appear behind a god which you weren't targeting, and it would make no sense. And you do all your damage to, say, a tank instead of their squishy carry, which is what you were aiming at. So I think this means that they've made the game logic better so that you are focusing the correct god that you are aiming more for and not randomly attacking a tank a couple of yards to the right. So yeah, I think that's a good change for Loki. It's better. So let's just briefly go back over it. Vulcan, I think good. Entirely positional play. I think he'll be very, very strong until people discover how to counter him, but otherwise, good god, I think. General, lots of little things fixed. Spectator, fixed. Buffs, cooldown, ridiculous. Damage, good. Speed buff, we'll have to see whether that's good or bad. Bark of Hope, good little nerf. Death Toll, good for melees in the middle. Golden Bow, necessary little buff. Maggie's Blessing, excellent little help there. Vampiric Shroud, very useful for mage mids now. Warlock Sash is now a defensive item instead of a more magical damage item and gives you health instead of mana, which is, in my opinion, a good thing because of the tanky meta. Mage Eye Boots and Warrior Tab Eye Boots have been given pen, physical and magical pen, but have been nerfed, as in their out of combat speed's been nerfed. Reinforced Boots doesn't have a penetration or anything, but it has kept the... It has been given, the added movement speed out of combat. Girdle of Might gives you extra 10% magical and physical power. I like the change. I think it will be better for the game, but it could be overpowered. We'll have to see. Meditation, a buff, but not necessarily amazing. Creeping Curse, big buff, and I'm really happy. I think it will make the game better and more fighty, more brawly kind of gameplay, which is what I preferably like. Fatalis, Focus, has been changed into a focus item, and I hate it. Hopefully it'll go back when Hi-Rez... It'll go back to a pure attack speed item. Hopefully it'll go back when Hi-Rez has more items which they can make as specific focus items, and I think they will have specific focus items. Speaking of specific focus items, Circlet of Focus has been changed into a focus item. It gives a little focus on use, which could be broken, don't know yet. We'll have to see in competitive and everything how well the stats of that mixes out and whether it needs a small nerf or a little bit of an increase. We don't know, but it depends entirely on how it's used. Ares, the Shackles, has been in better to make you better slow. I think it's a good thing. Freya, it's crazy. It radiates stronger now. It's a no-brainer to pick her in casual games if you're fighting, if you've got a good lane partner. She's incredibly strong now. She's still very squishy in combat though, so focus Freya. That's, one tip that I can give. Murder Freya as soon as you see her. Don't let her get strong. Just keep killing her. I don't care what the other person is in the game, you kill Freya. Hell, nerf to her cooldowns. Good. She needed it, definitely. She's still being banned all the time, of course, so we can't see what she's like now, but we'll have to play test to see if she needs a little bit more. Hercules' Mitigate Wounds has been changed from 12 to 17 seconds, which is very good. He was a bit overstrong with this ability before. Hopefully now this will be more in tone with what should be happening. I still think his number 2 is a bit overpowered, but have to see. Odin, I'm very happy with Gundir's Might Slow. Very, very good. Ring of Spears, I'm happy and dubious as whether it's staying. It's a very good... It's in tone with Vulcan, and we'll have to see whether they both get nerfed or both get buffed, because I don't think they're going to nerf one and buff the other unless Vulcan is proven to be overpowered or underpowered. We'll have to see. And Loki's Assassinate, it will now target the squishy mage instead of the tank that's standing next to them, which is good. So yeah, that is the January 30th Smite open beta. I don't know why they've got closed up there. Open beta patch. I hope you enjoyed my video. Thank you very much for watching, and leave a comment if you enjoyed it or if you didn't, and tell me how I could improve. And if you would like my content, then please subscribe.